Hello and welcome to Uncommon Law, my podcast about true stories from my life experience of over 50 years as a lawyer and trial judge. This is a look at the law from the inside out, stuff they don't teach in law school. This is Judge Rudy Greco, retired justice of the New York State Supreme Court. Boxing trainer Teddy Atlas was training Mike Tyson. He went up to Catskill, New York. He was a troubled kid, and he went up to Catskill, New York to stay with Cus D'Amato at Cus's house in Athens, New York. Cus shared a house with a lady named Camille, and they were running a gym. Cus was running a gym in Catskill, right adjacent to Athens, New York. And it was like a house for wayward boys who were boxing, and maybe not so wayward boys who were boxing. And Teddy was up there and doing very well until he had a bad car accident. And he hurt his back to such an extent that boxing was precluded. And he had been there a while, and Cus was impressed with his intelligence and his dedication and said, "Why don't you stay? You'll make an excellent trainer, and you can be my protege as a trainer," he said, "because you're really smart, and you can help me. I'm getting old. I don't want to train these guys, and I can show you what to do and teach you what to do, and you can do that and pick up for me." So Teddy came from Staten Island, and he worked in the Catskills until he had a run-in with Mike Tyson. Mike was misbehaving and stalking Teddy's sister-in-law, a teenage girl, and eventually it degenerated to the point where Teddy pulled a gun on him, and then Cus had to make a choice. Whether he was going to keep Mike Tyson or he was going to keep Teddy Atlas. And guess which one he picked? He picked Mike Tyson. So that meant Teddy, who was just married with a pregnant wife, was out on his own. He was supposed to get 5% of Tyson's contract, but that never materialized. Teddy came to New York, and I tried to help him out. I had met him up there when I was with Wilfred Benitez and Roberto Vinas. We had gone up there for some sparring, and Benitez and Tyson had the same manager, Jimmy Jacobs and Bill Caton, and they were supporting Cus and Camille in the whole operation up in Catskill. They had like a farm team up there. Teddy came down to New York City, and he was looking for work, and I was trying to help him. I was a lawyer for Gleason's. I tried to help him get some work, although his reputation preceded him because he did a sterling job with Mike Tyson, and everybody in the amateurs in the boxing world is a small world, and they knew Teddy's competence. So he was catching on, but it takes time, and he had mouths to feed. Well, Twyla Tharp herself is an American icon. Twyla is diminutive. She's a little bit of a thing. She probably weighs 90 pounds soaking wet. She's about 5'1", 5'2", but she's a dynamo. And she's not only a dancer, but a choreographer. She has She had one of the most renowned dance troupes, the Twyla Tharp dance. And she did a number of different works, including those that she choreographed. Deuce Coupe, which was a modern dance to a Beach Boys soundtrack. She did another one that was sensational, 12 Sinatra songs, the Frank Sinatra soundtrack. She choreographed the dancing in the famous movie Amadeus about Mozart. And she did a couple of Broadway shows, including Singing in the Rain, the redo of Singing in the Rain, the classic. And she did the Billy Joel musical, whose name escapes me right now. But Twyla is as I said, she worked with Baryshnikov, American Ballet Theater, everybody. She's like up there with Martha Graham and people of that stature. Well, Twyla, when Teddy, at the same time that Teddy was coming down from Catskill and looking for work, maybe a few months later, Twyla had been, at that point in time, 42 years old. This was in the late 70s, in the mid-80s maybe. And Twyla was 42, and she was trying to work herself back into shape because she had created and choreographed a dance piece called Fait Accompli, which required her to be alone, the only female on stage with 10 male dancers for 26 minutes. And that's a grueling piece of work. And she was trying to dance her way, as she usually did throughout her career. She was trying to dance her way into good shape at rehearsals, but it wasn't working because now she was getting older. And she said, "I don't know." She's very intelligent. She said, "I think I'm going to have to come up with a breakthrough here. I need an athletic trainer." And let's see. And she's having this discussion with her group of dancers, and they said all these different athletes, they went through different sports, and they concluded that boxing was the most like dancing, and boxing people had to be in good shape. So maybe she needed a boxing trainer. And up pops one of the dancers, a little diminutive gal, part of the company, just like Twyla, Barbara Hoon, who happened to be dating my best friend Gino, who owned the racing club. Barbara Hoon said, Twyla, my boyfriend's best friend, he's the lawyer for Gleason's gym. We'll ask him. And so it came to pass that Barbara got on the phone to me and said, do you know anybody that might train Twyla? And the light bulb went off right away. It was a no-brainer. I said, sure, Teddy Atlas. He'd be terrific. And he's very smart. Twyla would like him. She's a highly intelligent person. And he knows his business. And he's got a good credential there. He's the guy that trained Mike Tyson. And she would recognize that. So it worked. I got them together. Twyla called, spoke to Teddy, and she said, Ted, all right, you can train me. And they agreed on pretty much like a boxing regimen. And most fighters, professional fighters, championship caliber fighters, will train for about 6 weeks for a big match. And so they thought of a 6 week protocol and maybe 6 days a week for a couple of hours a day, just like Twyla was going to train for a championship fight. Now, Twyla said, look, Ted, I don't want to go to Gleason's because people there, somebody's going to walk in and recognize me. I don't want any publicity. I want to go under the radar. So Teddy, who lived in Staten Island, and Twyla, who lived on the Upper West Side, Central Park West, decided on Teddy's suggestion, a compromise. They would train at a little Bensonhurst, Brooklyn gym, which was out of the way in the boxing world and in the show business world. Nobody would recognize Twyla there. And she was happy to go there, and Teddy was happy to meet her there. And they did. She started training, and before long, the training evolved between the two of them as a contest of wills. Could Teddy push her to a point where she quit? Well, she never quit. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't show any emotion whatsoever, no matter what he did. There was no quit in this woman at all. Unlike Mike Tyson, who would complain if he got pushed, beyond his limits or a little bit, somewhat beyond his limits. He would quickly complain and say, oh, that's enough. I don't want to do it. No, come on, Ted. Oh, and Teddy would have to force him. Twyla just looked at him with a blank look on her face and kept going. Finally, Teddy said, you know what? This is getting dangerous. I don't want to hurt the woman. He said, I backed off. He said, I backed off because she would never quit. I realized she's not going to quit. She's tough as nails. And on top of it all, Teddy would teach her how to box so she could shadow box and hit the bag. It was all part of the workout, jump rope, etc., etc. And the amazing thing about Twyla, it's not so amazing when you think about it, was her kinetic intelligence. Teddy would show her in slow motion, Twyla, this is how you jab, or this is how you throw a right cross, or this is how you throw a left hook. As soon as you showed her, she adapted it and remembered it cold, perfectly, in wonderful form, no practice, no nothing. It became part of her repertoire. She just took these movements and absorbed them like a sponge. Teddy said, oh my goodness, I never saw anybody like that. But dancing requires kinetic intelligence. People don't know that about boxing. People think maybe boxers, some of them are not so well educated and they don't sound like they're very intelligent, but they are, because to hit and not be hit, and all of this under threat of injury in front of a lot of people on split-second basis is a very hard thing to do. You have to be very, very smart kinetically. The muscle memory has to be terrific. Anyway, Tyler was doing very, very, very well. At the end of the 6 weeks, Twyla, who had been rehearsing after she worked out with Teddy, she would go to the rehearsals in the theater district and at the studio, and she was ripped. She was so proud of herself. She had definition in her muscles, and she wanted to go. She asked Teddy and myself, can we set up secret sparring, not telling anybody she's a woman, and then smuggle her into Gleason's gym, and she wanted to spar? Well, we thought better of that, not because she couldn't do it, but nobody wanted to take a chance that she might get hurt. Probably hurt whoever we set up in sparring, without even meaning it. And she even tried. She was so impressed with Teddy that she recommended Teddy to Paul Simon, the singer, a songwriter, who was a dear friend of hers. And he had a young son, and he was interested in having his son train. And Paul met me at Gleason's gym, and he's a very introverted guy, and nobody paid him any attention. Nobody put him in an awkward spot. But he's so introverted, I think he was overwhelmed by the place, and he never came back. Anyway, Twyla's piece now, she was in great shape, and fait accompli had its premiere at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and it was a giant success. I was there, my wife Melanie was there, Teddy, his wife Elaine, And we saw the whole production. It was awesome. And she incorporated into the choreography a lot of boxing moves. She had little references, movement references to boxing, like jabbing, ducking, throwing punches, etc., etc., pivoting. And at the end, it was a big success. People were throwing flowers, as is customary in ballet, throwing flowers on the stage. And Teddy and I, we gave Twyla a satin robe with her embroidered name, Kid Tharp, on the back, and a pair of boxing gloves. And she wore the robe on stage. She was delighted. She was so proud, and put the gloves, they were on, tied together, and she put them over her neck and wore them like a necklace. Well, after that, she said, I'd like to see some real fights. Maybe you guys can take me. We took her to Madison Square Garden, and she was amazed. She says, well, first of all, we were ringside. She says, this is not as violent in person as it is on television, where they keep repeating the same sequence. And she said, I always thought that dancing was the toughest activity anybody could do, because dancers, unbeknownst to most people, get hurt quite a lot. They collide, they get concussions, they have falls, they break limbs, they hurt their feet, obviously ankles, feet, toes, all of that's up for grabs. She said, but boxing, I have to admit, is even tougher than dancing, because dancing or choreography with bad intentions, where somebody on the other side is not by accident, but by intention, is going to try to hurt you. And she was awestruck by the whole thing and became a boxing fan. Many years later, I saw like an Architectural Digest type magazine. It's about home decor and furnishings. And Twyla was featured in her West Side apartment overlooking Central Park. And she had a trunk. It was photographed. She called it in her bedroom at the foot of the bed, her memory trunk. And she posed. She said, every time I get a little depressed or I feel a little down, I reach into my trunk and I go through these things, and they bring back wonderful memories, and that cheers me up. And she posed in the magazine with her Kid Tharp robe and her boxing gloves, which I thought was a pretty nice tribute to the whole experience. Well, we all know what we think is compromised in the concept of being tough, but it's more than just physical. It's more than just giving and taking physical punishment. Truly tough requires mental toughness and psychological toughness that very few people have. You'll see it in championship fights when both people are very, very equally matched. It's the psychological thing that gives them the edge, one over the other. So, back to Iron Mike Tyson, who once self-proclaimed himself the baddest man on the planet. Well, tiny, petite Twyla Tharp, in my estimation, and Teddy's, more important than Teddy Atlas's estimation, is the toughest person on the planet. He could never break her. Teddy said, she's the toughest person I ever trained. Tougher than a steel ball bearing. She's unbreakable. I wish we had any box of 1, 2, 3 boxes that were that tough. We'd be zillionaires. Thanks for listening. Come back next week for another episode of Uncommon Law, lessons they don't teach in law school. I'm Judge Rudy Greco. Court is adjourned.